So boys, we're beginning our lesson on vascular tissue. So we've been discussing this over the past couple of weeks, and we've been calling vascular tissue transport tissue. And in a plant, we've mentioned that there's two types of transport tissue. So you have xylem tissue and you have phloem tissue. And we've mentioned that xylem tissue carries water and minerals. And we've mentioned that phloem tissue transports food. We're just going to take a closer look at what xylem tissue is composed of. So it's composed of two types of cells, and they have names you wouldn't be familiar with before. So some cells are called xylem tracheate cells, and the other cells are called xylem vessel cells. The tracheate cells are tapered cells, so at the end of them, they are closed. So it's almost like you have a cylinder, which we spoke about in school, but at the end you have a cone shape on each side of the cylinder, which closes it. And the water struggles a little bit to get up through these types of tissue. I'm drawing little holes on the outside of the cells called pits, and they allow for sideways movement of water. I'm saying water, but we're keeping in mind that minerals are being transported as well. I mentioned that the end of them are closed, and we use the word that the end of the cells are tapered. And also we've spoken about the high amount of pressure that will be on these cells to transport water against the force of gravity. So we have mentioned that they contain a really strong carbohydrate called lignin. So I'm just going to label in that this is a carbohydrate and that the carbohydrate is called lignin. So that's a key word in my description of them. Cells that would mainly have plants that would have mainly have tracheate cells in them would be like pine trees. They're a little bit more primitive. Whereas the newer trees, like oak trees or ash trees, they'd have a mixture of xylem type cells. So they would also have these cells that are a little bit kind of like a tissue roll or an open cylinder. So I'm going to draw it like an open-ended vessel. So we can see that I'm making it open-ended at the end, and I'm mentioning that these are open-ended. And I'm also going to give it its little pits for sideways movement of water. So I'm going to cheat a little and use the same label. And I'm also going to give it lignin. So the really strong carbohydrate. And I'm just going to label that just kind of as a learning for me again, that lignin gives it strength. So you might take that opportunity perhaps to draw these two cells into your sheet that I had handed you out on your notes. So it's point number 11 on your notes for this chapter, and I'm going to show that to you now. So it's point number 11 under draw and label a xylem tracheate and a xylem vessel cell. The second type of cells that we mentioned are phloem tissue cells. So I'm going to draw examples of phloem tissue cells now. So they're made up of two types of cells, but they kind of work together. So we have this kind of cylinder-shaped cell again, except in that it acts like a sieve. So I'm drawing it more like a sieve that's kind of in the middle of the cell. And the name kind of matches me drawing the kind of sieve idea that the food is travelling up through it. So I'm going to just draw a second one of these sieves, and it might be a little bit clearer for you. So here's the food coming up through it, and to reach the next one and coming out as it's travelling up and coming out the other side. So this is called a sieve tube cell. And what controls the movement of food up through that cell? It has a cell attached to it. The cell attached to it is called a companion cell. So it's like its friend. So it's called a companion cell. Now, this cell has cytoplasm and a nucleus, which makes phloem living tissue. So it's a companion cell. I'm going to mention that it has a nucleus, and I'm going to mention that it has cytoplasm in it as well. And it's a living cell. So I'm just going to put down the end that phloem is living, whereas I'm going across to mention that xylem tissue is dead tissue, whereas phloem is living tissue. We've already distinguished them in that we said phloem transports food, and we've mentioned that xylem transports water and minerals instead. We've shown that there's lignin in xylem, but we've shown no lignin in the phloem. So quite a lot of differences between them. So what your objective for today is to make sure that you can draw these cells, that you can name them. So just to remind you, in phloem, we have a companion cell which controls food going through, and we have a sieve tube cell. Whereas in our xylem, we had a tracheate cell and we had a vessel cell. So two quite different cells. I will be posting up examples of this in our teams. And also I'm just making note that we're working on part number 11 on page 3 of our sheet. We're going to be drawing in our phloem cells on part number 16 of our sheet. And also from the work that we've done today, I will send these on as an assignment. You will also complete question 15 from the 2004 ordinary level paper. It's on page 12 of your handout. And you will also complete part B of question 14 on page 14 of your handout as well. So this one as well. I will post this as an assignment up in Teams. Thank you.